I think the next thing we should discuss, or else we're going to be here till 3 a.m.
Yeah,
I don't mind.
Like we are at the
Just
Seder,
like Pesach.
just like Pesach. But I think if you go to the last, one of the last paragraphs in Magid, and let's read. I think this paragraph says it all. B'chol dor vador. This is the goal of Magid. So have this in mind the entire Magid.
The B'chol dor vador.
B'chol dor vador in every
right.
generation. You ready? You're going to read it?
Yeah, I'll read it.
Go for it.
In every generation, one is obliged to regard himself as though he himself had actually gone out from Egypt. As it says, you shall tell your son on that day, saying, for the sake of this, Hashem did so for me when I went out from Egypt. Not only our fathers did the Holy One bless as he redeemed, but also did he redeem with them, as it says. And he brought us out from there so that he might bring us and give us the land which he had promised to our fathers.
Us, me. It's all about us. We, the people at this Seder, this is the goal of the Seder, to experience something together that is real for us, that can give us the confidence to know we can get out of anything. Why? Because look what God did for our forefathers, and he did it for us also, and he's going to do it again. He's going to do it again. And this is the goal. This is the goal. It has to, you have to experience it, and you have to see it's about you. It's about this generation, right? Everyone at this Seder.
Yes. It's not a,
So
that's
back
one
to
thing
my
I learned.
housekeeper,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not telling her that God took my ancestors out of Egypt. God took me out of Egypt.
Right.
Understand? It has to be a real, like Rabbi Wolga was saying, it has to be for us. B'chol dor v'dor, in every generation, a person should see as if he exited from Egypt.
Then she'll really think you're crazy.
But
That's some crazy asses. It's fine.
that's the first thing that you guys taught me
She doesn't
when I
think
was
she
learning the
knows.
holidays, was that we don't commemorate past events.
No.
We experience those things as our forefathers did in every generation.
Right.
And they, in fact, I was always familiar with that concept. And you're right, it's probably one of the first things that anyone is taught. You have to understand there's a different approach to when we talk about history. There's a different approach. But I was just learning that, in fact, that energy that we're tapping into, so the way it's normally taught is you're tapping into that ancient energy, or that energy that was put into that time. But in fact, that energy is intensifying each time. It's getting greater. So this feeling of freedom can actually affect us on a greater level. And that's exactly what this is saying, is that you can reach even higher heights. You can get to even greater places, right? They had challenges back then, but they didn't have cell phones and they didn't have the internet, right? So our generation has its own unique challenges. In fact, much greater challenges that were never presented to generations before us. And to understand that you can break free from all of that. When we're talking about breaking free from Egypt, use that as a model for the fact that we could break through from even greater challenges.
And I think the whole telling of the 10 plagues and how God is behind all of nature is probably more important as the generations progress, because the more we have discovered how nature works, a lot of the world sort of says these things are sort of governed by themselves, they run by themselves. And we also probably need that visceral reminder that God is orchestrating all of nature, that he's behind all that. Is that part of the idea too?
100%. It's the central idea of Magid, is the 10 plagues and the story of the Exodus. The story of the Exodus is the story of the 10 plagues.
Yeah.
Right? Is the story of God's complete control over nature, and the fact that there really is no such thing as nature, right? The Nile River is only a river full of water because that's the way that God wills it to be.
Right.
And if he flips it to blood, then it flips to blood.
Right.
Whatever God's will is. There's no such thing as nature. And that is where the Haggadah needs to get you to.
And as much of a command as we think we have over nature, the Egyptians had a pretty crazy command over nature. The idea that they were sorcerers, they were extremely skilled in black magic, and this is it's not like a fairy tale or anything. They literally describe, the Medrash describes that, or actually I think the verses themselves describe that the sorcerers were mimicking and imitating whatever Moses was able to effect through God's will over the land of Egypt. They were mimicking the same effect. If the water turned to blood, they could turn the water into blood. they were able to match him pace for pace all along, well, up until a certain point, and then they discovered they weren't able to match him any longer, and then they said to Paro, they admitted defeat, and they're like, must be God's finger, because we can't match this anymore. So all Paro must have thought at that point is, okay, then Moses is just a greater sorcerer than my own court. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. But they had an extremely high, extremely heavy command over nature. So we may think that we have a pretty strong command today. They did too, and they were still astounded by God's omnipotent command over nature.
I don't want to get into this too much, but the like you were saying, the whole purpose is just to realize that God's in control of everything. The world was created, our sages told us, with 10 sayings, that God created the world, so to speak, in 10 stages.
Right.
And what our sages also teach us is that the 10 plagues were a reversal of that each one of the plagues parallels coming backwards, an unraveling of creation to the point where every stage of reality that had been built had all been unraveled, and the illusion was dispelled, and to the point where we just said, look, it's God. It's just God.
Wow. Okay.
And then you had those 10 commandments that brought it back.
Right.
Our sages do eye for an eye on the utterance that created the plague that diffused it, and then the one of those 10 commandments that brought it back.
Are they really linked one for one?
Yeah, one for
You
one.
can draw a correlation there.
Yeah. You have a whole night to figure out which.
It's a fascinating exercise.
Amazing.
Okay, so you end, the next thing that you get to is you make a blessing at the end of Magid. That's a big one.
Okay.
It's a blessing. This is like culmination of Magid is thank you Hashem for taking us out of Egypt. I know we could face any challenge because we know that fact happened. That was true.
Right.
And we have you with us every step of the way. Thank you Hashem. Right?
Okay.
And then you drink the second cup of wine. First cup of wine you drink at Kiddush.
Right, okay.
Originally. Now here's your second cup of wine. You drink the cups of wine. By the way, I don't know if we mentioned it. We mentioned
Page 20.
we mentioned leaning like royalty.
Right.
When you drink the cups of wine, it's very important to lean, and it's hard to do. You have to you may have to practice with a few cups of wine before, right? But to be able to lean and drink a cup of wine and not spill it all over your. That's why.
Also, it doesn't matter how you voted. You have to lean left.
You have to lean left. Yes, you have to lean left. But we lean to the left, and it's an important element in the mitzvahs that we do. The mitzvahs that we do that come along with leaning.
Yeah.
Because it's the complete picture of setting the tone. Each mitzvah. So the ones that we're meant to do while leaning, when the Haggadah says we do this while leaning, usually there's some instructions there. It's important. Right? It's important to lean and to view ourselves. We're transforming ourselves.
Part of the experience.
It's part of the experience, part of the transformation that's going on. Okay, what's the next element of the Seder?
We recite the blessing and we eat, correct?
Right
the name?
before
What's the
One
name
right
for it?
before that.
Magid, and then
Rokzo.
Rotza.
Okay, which is washing the hands for the meal.
Now this is your classic washing the hands before
Okay.
you're
With the
eating.
blessing.
With the
With the
God
blessing
eating
before you
blessing.
eat bread, because you are about to eat matzah.
Okay.
For many, this is like hours and hours since you ate your piece of celery, right? But yes, you're about to eat matzah, and the anticipation has been building because we've been talking about it so much.
Right.
We've been talking the whole Maggid about the fact that they were slaves and they ate matzah and they left fast and they left quick and they had matzah on their backs baking, and now you're ready to eat it.
Right.
Okay, so that's the section of motzi matzah.
Okay.
Right, you're gonna make the blessing.
Okay.
We can get into the technical. You want to do the process of making this blessing?
Sure. Okay, so when you make hamotzi, what you're going to do is you have your stack of matzahs, like Cohen, the Levi, which has now been cracked in half already.
Right.
The other half is hidden away. And then the bottom one is also whole. So when you're going to make hamotzi, just like any time you make hamotzi, ideally you should have all 10 fingers on the bread.
Okay.
You lift it up when you say Hashem's name, and you lift up the whole stack. And the reason you lift up the whole stack is anytime we make hamotzi on Shabbos or on a Yom Tov, we have what's called lechem mishnah, doubled bread. We have 2 whole pieces of bread.
Right.
So really, it would be enough theoretically just to have the top and the broken middle piece. That's 2. but we want 2 full whole pieces of bread. That's why we have the bottom one.
Okay.
So we hold that up. We make the regular blessing of hamotzi.
Okay.
And once we've done that, we've already eliminated the need for the bottom matzah
Okay.
because we made hamotzi already, so that you can drop right after you make hamotzi, but don't eat anything yet.
Okay.
So now you're holding the top matzah and the middle broken piece. Now you make your blessing of al achilas matzah. That's
Okay.
the specific mitzvah of eating matzah. So that goes together, the one after the other. First hamotzi, and then al achilas matzah. Then these 2 matzahs that you're holding, you want to eat a very significant portion, let's leave it at that, of both of the top matzah and
Okay.
that middle cracked matzah together. You want to eat them both at the same time. As we've been talking about this, the culmination of the top matzah, which represents the royalty and the leaving of Egypt, and that broken piece of matzah on the bottom, which represents lechem oni, the bread of affliction. You eat
Okay.
them both simultaneously together. Won't go into the reasons technically why you have to eat them together, but that's at least one idea.
So everyone needs to eat a certain measurement of matzah, but there might not be in that 1.5 that's left
Yeah.
for everyone. So what you do is you give them a piece of the top and the middle,
Okay.
and then you can add from a different piece of matzah to make that measurement.
Gotcha.
If you want, in the
Show notes.
in the notes below, we'll have a link for the measurement so people can print out on an 8.5 by 11. You can print out. I have it printable, so we'll add it as a PDF. We can just link to it in the comment
Great.
section.
Okay.
You were definitely prepared.
Well, many years ago I was prepared.
All right. So now the bitter herbs.
It's also before just like here's like a pro tip
Okay.
that I learned from a pro
Okay.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
We're going to have a number of mitzvahs that we're going to do
Yeah.
right now. Eating, they all involve eating.
It's great.
You're going to need some supplies, right?
Right.
Have them readily available. So if everyone's going to be eating a half a matzah or 3/4 of a matzah, if everyone at the table is going to be eating that amount of matzah, have the matzah on the table, right? Don't make the blessing and then be like, oh, now we need to kind of like set yourself up for success, right?
Right.
So even split up not the matzahs that you're holding as the leader of the Seder, but everyone can have matzah in front of them, so it's readily available.
Right.
Maror as well. Maror can follow is going to follow immediately following the matzah, right?
Right.
So bring out the maror and get it ready. If everyone gets their portion of maror set up, you're kind of ready to do the mitzvah. And
Yeah.
these are meant to be done. Really, you have three mitzvahs here.
Okay.
You have the mitzvah of matzah. Then we have maror, which is the next step in the 15 steps.
Yep.
And then you have korach, right? Which is the sandwich, the matzah and maror combination.
Right.
Okay? Those are 3 mitzvahs. Ideally, one should not talk about other things besides for the mitzvah that you're in the middle of doing
Yeah.
during while you're doing these, even in between these steps. So they kind of look at them as 3 steps, but let's bundle them together. And so that takes some preparation. It means you're going to talk through the 3 steps before you actually go through them. This is what's going to happen, right? Everyone's aware. Everyone's got their matzah set up. Everyone's got the right amount. Okay, any questions? Do we want to put, okay, everyone's got their maror set up, great. And then we're going to take the same, talk about the sizes, however much it is, but kind of get yourself set up so that you don't need to talk, because this is really one big mitzvah here.
Right. You should
Okay.
really get set up before you wash, because it's best not to talk after you wash.
There's another
Right.
pro tip that I would like to share that you reminded me of that I've done in previous years. If we would have a big Seder, it can take 25 minutes to give everybody the matzah the right size. So what we
Right.
did was we had Ziploc bags that before Pesach, one of my children, that was their job, is to measure out the measurements that they will need for motzi matzah,
Okay.
that they will need for maror. For even the maror amounts, we would have these little shot glasses because
Yeah.
we had the ground, what is it called?
Grated horseradish.
The grated horseradish was really bitter. So we'd
You
have
guys
the
are
right
pros.
amount of measurement in like these little shot glasses. So everyone had it by their seat ready to go.
Oh, I didn't realize. So it's a really precise measurement everyone
Yeah,
needs to
it
have.
is. Right.
Okay.
Any
Yeah.
eating that we're doing is
Even the leaves have it all prepared. So everyone just, this is your package. Everyone has their thing by their plate.
Amazing.
As soon as
Okay.
we're done with the magid, everyone will get their setup.
We
Okay.
should mention what could be used from her.
We'll
there
get
in a
there.
second.
It doesn't have to be so precise. There's a minimum amount.
Okay.
Right? And for matzah, it's surprisingly large because the minimum amount goes by volume and not density. So for bread, it's really not so much bread, but for matzah, it's actually a lot
Right.
because it's very thin
Yeah.
and very dense. So just as a very a rough guideline, if you have machine matzah, shmura matzah, that's machine matzah, at least a half of a full piece of matzah is the minimum requirement for each session of eating.
Yeah.
And if you've got the round handmade matzahs, some are a little bit thicker. If it's a little bit thicker one, about 2/3 of that matzah. And if it's a very thin matzah, so then at least 3/4 of it.
Okay.
So you're eating, I mean, if you're thinking about it, you're almost eating for matzah, you're eating almost a whole round shmura matzah, right?
Right.
Okay, you get 2/3. And then you're doing maror. You're having a certain amount of maror, and then you're doing that matzah again, that same amount, as a sandwich with maror, right? So I mean, there's a lot, and so
Yeah.
so to prepare, I think the best way to do this is, okay, let's get the technical details. Let's make sure we all fulfill our halachic obligation.
Yeah.
Make sure we're eating, the minimum amount. Good. We got that prepared in front of us. Now, before we wash our hands, can we have a discussion about what's going to be in our mind when we're eating the matzah? Can we have
Right.
a discussion about what's going to be in our mind when we're going to eat the maror? Because before maror, it's not appropriate to have that discussion. Let's have those discussions here, right?
Okay.
Let's talk. Let's get some clear idea what's going to be in my mind for matzah, what's going to be in my mind for maror, and what's going to be in my mind when I have the sandwich. After that, it's free game. After you go back to expounding and talking freely, you're going to enter into the meal portion of the Haggadah.
Right.
But for these three, you really have to look at them as bundled, and we don't want to get distracted because this is the experience. We're talking about
Right.
experiential. We're talking about experiencing right here. We're eating it. We're taking that experience and putting it to the deepest part of us, inside of our body.
Yeah.
We're becoming one, literally, with the experience.
Right.
Right? This is not in the mind anymore. We're now exercising all different parts of the body. So have that discussion before we wash our hands. Let's stop for a minute. We talked a lot during the Haggadah about what was Egypt and what was matzah and what is maror and what was bitter. Let's get it down into one line that we can imagine and think about. If you can have two or three, but let's
Yeah.
get it down into something succinct that we can think about while we're eating.
Right.
I think it's also
Okay.
very important
Makes sense.
because of all the preparation that people put into preparing for Pesach. Sometimes people can get very high strung. They're hungry. It's been a long day, several weeks preparing leading up to Pesach, and comes the Seder night, and sometimes people can be on edge. That's not the right time for it. Okay, it's not ever a right time for it, but you can go listen to the Musar classes. But specifically the Seder time is a time to have overwhelming joy,
Yeah.
but also a time to have patience, because you can have people there, you can ask questions. You don't want to be, I don't have time, let's go. The idea is for this to be a time, we can do that every other time of the year, we can rush to go eat. Now the idea is we're rushing to tell the story.
Right.
And we shouldn't feel that,
Yeah.
that somebody is, if you need to sleep beforehand, sleep before the Seder, right? In the afternoon. If a person needs to eat during the afternoon, eat in the afternoon. Don't come in like,
Come prepared.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Dan said, it's much easier this year. We have Shabbos. It's beautiful.
Right.
Amazing. You get to rest a little.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There is a last minute rush, but it's on Friday. So
Right.
so there's no last minute, there's none of that, Erev Pesach, the day before Pesach, which normally would all your last minute cooking and everything like that. No, you come in, we're gonna come in, I think, with an air of relaxation.
Yeah.
Coming in out of Shabbos. Now it might that idea might stress some people out that they don't get that last minute preparation. But start now. Okay, so we did our three mitzvahs. I don't think we necessarily covered every idea about within those mitzvahs.
Maror, we didn't do.
Oh, okay, so let's go back tomorrow. Sorry.
Okay.
First of all, technically, like, what are we allowed to eat? What does Mar consist of? I'm going to ask you here.
Yeah.
Traditionally, there are two things that are used for maror. Horseradish. If you want to get, real strong about it, you get like a root of that white horseradish and grind it yourself. For me personally, I like it that it hurts, because that's the whole point, right? It should feel bitter.
It's
Again,
like you feel it in your brain, like like your skull hurts.
yeah, you're crying. The point is that you should really feel it. That's the idea. People try to minimize it. I like to maximize the feeling.
I think people are concerned they're not going to recover in time.
No, I'm with you on that. And some people just want to have lettuce, and that can also suffice. But I agree with Rabbi Bosco. Like, you want to feel it.
Feel it, right?
So what was the slavery like? What was the pain like? Get into it. Cry. Shed some tears. It's not so bad.
And as Rabbi Wolbe just mentioned, lettuce is the other traditional.
Specifically, any specific kinds?
Romaine lettuce.
And that's because at the root of the lettuce, it's very, very bitter. So even if you're not actually eating the root, you're eating the
Okay, you're not
leaf
eating the
themselves.
leafy part. You're eating.
No, you're eating the leafy part. But since
Right.
the root itself is very bitter, then I guess
The whole thing does count. But be warned, if you're using lettuce, as we mentioned before, on a technical note, it's measured by volume. You need a lot of lettuce, way more than you would think. So you pack it all up.
A lot of leaves of lettuce, right? That's very thin. That doesn't take up a lot of room. So you need a lot. But if you can mix with another pro tip, you can mix and match marors, right?
Okay.
So you can have a nice amount of the leaves, but if you want to get that feeling without your head exploding,
Right.
If you'd like that experience, then you can do that with the grated horseradish. Maror shouldn't be sweetened necessarily with anything else, right? So
Right.
some people use like the grain, right? Like the purple stuff, the purple horseradish from the can. That has too much other stuff in it. Let's go for the pure maror and keep it real, like we've been doing for thousands of years.
Okay.
And there's one more ingredient, the charosas, which is actually also on the Seder plate, the ka'ara. And the charosas is meant to remind us of the bricks and the mortar that they had to work with to build probably the pyramids, actually, for the Egyptians during the enslavement.
Okay.
The charosas would consist generally of ground up apples, some nuts, and maybe some wine. That would pretty much be it. And when you eat the mar, when you eat the bitter herbs, the first time you would dip it in. And the second time when you make the sandwich for korach, you would dip the entire sandwich in a little bit and eat it all together.
And a little bit of.
The charosas. You'd be dipping
Okay.
the sandwich in the charosas, or you'd be dipping the mar in. Try to get a little bit on when you eat it.
Yeah, but again, like Rabbi Wogelanter said, when you put the charosas on, we don't want to sweeten them too much. So you do dip it in, but you specifically shake it off.
Yeah, if you're getting a lot of it, like the chunky part, you don't want the chunky
There's
part.
symbolism in that also.
Okay.
Well, the whole
You got to
Seder is
come to
packed
the
with symbolism.
You got to come to the
Part two.
Seder to get the
But
full thing.
Yeah, you
even with
invited him? You
the
invited him?
horseradish, there's a minimum amount of quantity that everyone needs to eat.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
We'll get you that. It'll
Okay.
be very clear.
In the
see
comments
exactly
box
what it is.
below.
You'll see exactly what it is. Okay, what's the
All right.
next? You got those three. Those are your big three experiences.
Motzi,
Yeah.
matzah, moror, korech. Korech is the Hillel burger.
Right. We just did that. The shikon
Now you're up
orech.
to that. Yeah,
right.
Shulchan
So
Aruch.
Shulchan Aruch is the actual meal. But again, we're
Right.
going to have one, which is the moror, which is totally the bitter herbs, no matzah, no nothing. Just
Okay.
you don't lean. Then you have the korech, the Hillel burger, where you
Okay.
have 2 pieces of matzah, also measured. You have that with more in it,
Okay.
and that you do lean for.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's because the verse explicitly states that you should eat the Karban Pesach, eat the Passover sacrifice with maror and matzah. And since Hillel was alive while the temple was still standing, and he was eating the sacrifice, he would make a sandwich of all 3 things.
Okay.
And that one you could put charosas in. You can pack it up with some sweet stuff.
Enjoy.
Okay.
That's not
Excellent.
dessert though.
Now you're up to the meal.
All
Now,
right.
notice that it's one of the 15 stages. It's not just a happenstance. Just happens to be that we have a meal, right?
Right.
It's a holiday. You have a holiday meal, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a Seder.
Yeah.
Right. If you didn't have a meal, who would show up, right? But it's one of the steps.
Right.
So that kind of gets you in the frame of mind that don't allow the meal to become a distraction from what we're trying to experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a great time to come back to questions that maybe you wanted to keep certain parts moving before earlier.
Right.
But someone asked a really insightful question, or if they didn't, come prepared, right? Even if there aren't kids at your Seder, come prepared with some impactful questions. Keep the focus.
Yeah.
It's literally in the middle of this experience is
Yeah.
the meal. So keep the focus. It's a holiday meal. It's festive. It's happy, and it's meant to be that way. But keep the focus.
So if someone asks a question, I don't know the answer, I say that's a good question to come back.
Come back for the meal. Hope
Meal.
they forget. Very good.
Okay.
So one of the things that I like to do with my children, and this is another pro tip for those who are still watching this video now. So what I tell my children is I will give you a special treat for every question you ask. I want to encourage them to ask
Right.
questions. And I think it's not only for the Seder because you want to, talk about this redemption and this, but you also want to encourage your children in general to be inquisitive and
Right.
to ask questions in life.
Yes.
And it's a very important time for them to just be thinking of interesting new perspectives and gain a deeper understanding of the Seder.
Great.
So I tell them, ask as many questions as you can.
Even if you have to bribe them.
That's right. No, bribery is good. It works,
Yeah.
which is why the Torah says you can't do it.
The Talmud already describes bribing kids at the Seder, right? Keeping
Does it?
them engaged with fruits
Yeah.
and nuts and candy, whatever. I mean, whatever works, right?
Right.
Those are the suggestions that the Talmud gives. But you got to keep the kids engaged. So yeah, you got to be creative if there's kids at the Seder, and then if there's adults at the Seder, sometimes you have to be more creative.
Right.
Another just a very important thing to just keep in the back of our mind. Every one of our great grandparents had a Pesach Seder every year, in which they discussed the exact same things and were trying to internalize the same exact messages.
Right.
And I think it's an unbelievable thing. You think about it. It's like you imagine your great grandfather was doing the same exact thing, preparing for the Seder,
Right.
preparing the matzah and the maror and everything, cleaning the house. Like each one of our grandparents it's an unbelievable thing.
Right.
And now we're imparting this to our children. Right? It's such a powerful and important moment.
You could study the Talmud from 1,500 years ago and recognize the same elements of your preparation and your experience that you have every year.
Amazing.
Now, we're in the middle of the meal, which
Right.
sounds like a great time to just let loose and eat and enjoy. But keep in mind that you have more matzah to eat.
Dessert.
You have more matzah to eat. Rabbi Chaim, how much matzah?
It depends what kind of matzah you have.
Okay.
Well, one kazak, right? So the same parameters that we gave earlier. If it's machine matzah, you're going to do at least a half. Hand-make matzah, depends if it's thick, then 2/3, thinner, 3/4.
Okay.
See your size sheet in the notes.
Okay.
See your,
Okay.
Yeah, it's very handy.
Click
and
subscribe. Click subscribe.
It's very handy to think it through. So that's really
Smash
the
that
next
like
section.
button.
What is it called there? Tzah?
Even more subtle.
Slam that like button.
So Foon?
Tzafun. Yeah, tzafun is eating the afikomen.
Okay.
Okay, eating the afikomen is just that. Eating the afikomen.
Okay.
Right? We eat it while leaning, praying in our hearts, probably what we should be doing.
Right.
Praying in our hearts for the ultimate time when we are able to eat the Paschal lamb,
Right.
the Karban Pesach,
The rebuilding of the temple.
in the rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. Right? This is really, I think, the switch from in the Haggadah. This is the switch from talking about the past to really focusing on the future and what we're yearning for.
Right.
Understanding that, yes, we're free and we've been redeemed and it's all true. But there's something even better than where we are,
Right.
Right.
right? There's something even better coming and yearning for that.
The world to come.
And that's really tzafun, is that hidden element, the part that's hidden away for the future.
Safun means hidden.
Tzafun means
Okay.
hidden. The actual
All
word,
right,
like the afikomen was hidden
Right.
from the beginning of the Seder.
Okay.
Another piece of symbolism, right?
Right.
That we hid it away knowing that it'll be there. It'll be there. We have to get there, but it'll be there.
Right.
And so yearning for that, we move, I think, into the next part of the Haggadah.
Okay.
It's really like the flow. If you want to talk about a flow, these are not, individual 15 steps. There's a real
Right.
flow here.
And just
Now-
note that you have to wait till you get to this point to eat the afikomen. You had to go through the process. You had to go through the
Right.
journey. You had to go through this experience in order to reach this moment when you finally can partake of it.
This is like the life of an individual all wrapped up into
Yeah.
an evening.
Yeah.
On a technical note, after you eat the afikomen, no more eating anything for the rest of the night. You should go to sleep with the taste of the afikomen on your mouth. If you need to drink something, you can drink water because it doesn't affect the flavor. but this is the last thing you eat. So if you want your candy or dessert, so have it before the Afikom.
Okay.
Right. And you will drink the last 2 cups of wine following the Afikom.
Okay. And following the African,
Yes, we're
you
gonna
can't
get-
have the wine.
No,
The wine
last-
The wine is part of the meal.
Okay.
We're going to get up to it now.
Is there something, why lean to the left? Is it something to do about the suppressing of judgment, or is there something to, what's the
The
whole?
reason the Talmud gives is very practical,
Okay.
because the way our physiology is,
Okay.
if you would lean to the right, so then food is more prone to going into your windpipe and choking.
And that's not
When you
good.
lean to the left,
Wow.
it goes down the esophagus easier. So
Lean-
I'm sure
Sages
there
were
are
so
deeper
brilliant.
reasons.
Even
but-
the
Lean
Talmud-
safely.
I love it when
Lean
they just have,
safely
like-
is the motto. Okay,
Even
lean
the Talmud,
safely.
even the Talmud has pro tips.
Yeah. That's amazing. Just the level of understanding the human anatomy.
Yeah, there must be more to it.
That's a good reason right there. Not
You
choking.
can stop right there.
I'm good with that.
Very good.
Okay.
The next section.
Borech.
Barek, which is now is this different? The Berkos Homozone.
It's the same Birkat Hamazon
Okay.
with the additions of the holiday. So
Okay.
We'll add
And-
Yalav Yavo, and we'll add for Pesach everything that's added for
I
Pesach.
think there's also a specific edition for the Seder night. If you look at the actual text.
Okay. And it's typically it's all built into the Haggadah, though. Right.
It is.
Yes.
It's in there. If it's not in there, you should get a refund.
Which one?
If your Haggadah doesn't know that it's Pesach,
So now the next is Hallel, which I understand that this is like which I never understood exactly what it is, but this is a mitzvah itself, is it rabbinic?
Yes.
Okay.
It's giving
Talk about-
praise to God for everything that we've experienced and we
Okay.
continue to experience.
Okay.
Next, Nirtza.
Right.
And then the nitzah.
By the way,
Right.
just one point on the Hallel. I know we're wrapping it up here, but normally for every holiday that we say Hallel, we say it in the morning. We say it during daytime because at nighttime is a time of hiddenness where we can't see. There's a lot of confusion. There's no light.
Right.
And Pesach is the only time, the night of Pesach, where we say Hallel at night. This
Okay.
is very unique with Pesach because Pesach is a time of illumination. It's a time of complete clarity that
Right.
even at night, it's like it's daytime.
Some had the
Okay.
custom not to even lock their doors overnight because they were that confident in God's presence and protection.
It's called the Leil Shimurim. It's a night of protection.
Right.
We're untouchables.
Right. It's like the it's the evening that God, the angel of death did not hit the Jewish home, so that same protection is playing out.
God's still protecting outside every Jewish home.
All right. Anything else you guys want to add to wrap up?
Find a way every Pesach, every holiday, every Shabbos, find a way to make it special for every person who's going to be there. If you have guests coming, ask them if there's something, a bottle of wine that they like or something special. It shouldn't just be an ordinary day, an ordinary holiday, an ordinary Shabbos. Try to find a way to make it special. If there's a special delicacy that they like, go out. If there's a delicacy that you like, treat yourself. It's Yom Tov. It's a holiday.
Right.
It's a time to feel that connection, to feel in a physical way and a spiritual way.
Amazing.
This was great, especially in the Torch Center, but I think maybe next year
In Jerusalem.
in Jerusalem.
let's do it.
Beautiful. Thank you,
Everything
rabbis.
stays consistent. It's the Torah Outreach Resource Center of the Holy Land.
There you go.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Torches.
Thank you, rabbis. We appreciate it. It's very helpful.
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.